Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I have to say, I am ready to get absolutely lost today. I've got my stack of notes, I've got my coffee, and I have a story that honestly kept me up half the night. We are wading into waters that are quite literally as deep as they get.
It is so good to be back. I'm your resident expert for this deep dive. And you're right, today is, well, it's heavy. We are talking about survival.
Right. And usually when we grab a stack of reports or novels about survival, the equation is pretty simple. It's man versus nature. You know the drill.
Yeah.
It's the cold, hunger, the elements. It's building a fire, catching a fish. It's a very physical thing.
Exactly. It's the physical battle to just keep the heart beating, the metabolic struggle.
But the stack of papers and the source material we are looking at today flips that script entirely. For everyone listening, our main focus, the book name is Life of Pi novel by Yann Martel, and must be noticed in audio overview output. And yes, it is about a boy shipwrecked in the Pacific Ocean. Yes, he is starving. But as I was reading this, I realized the battle isn't just against the salt and the sun. It is a battle against reality itself.
It really is. And it's a battle for the soul. This isn't just a manual on how to fish for turtles, though surprisingly there is a whole lot of that in there. It is a theological inquiry wrapped inside an adventure story. It essentially asks the question, when reality becomes too unbearable, what do we do?
And what an adventure to hang that question on. I mean, let's just set the scene for you before we unpack the philosophy. We have a 16-year-old Indian boy named Pi. He is stranded on a lifeboat for 227 days. And his companion, a 450-pound Royal Bengal tiger.
A companion who, by all laws of biology, should have eaten him within the first 20 minutes.
Exactly. So, our mission for this deep dive today is to move past the pop culture movie poster image, the cute boy and the cat floating on the boat, and really tear into the dense layers here.
Yeah.
Because the source material suggests this is actually two different stories. And by the end of this deep dive, you, the listener, are going to have to make a choice. A choice between what the protagonist calls dry, yeastless factuality and the better story.
And that choice tells us a whole lot more about ourselves than it does about the shipwreck itself.
So let's start at the very beginning, before the bud, before the tiger. We have to understand who this kid actually is. His given name is Piscine Patel. And folks, if you think you had a rough time with your name in middle school, just wait.
It is a highly unique name. He is essentially named after a swimming pool.
Not just any pool. And this backstory is so charming, but also so weird. His honorary uncle, a man he affectionately calls Mamaji, was a champion swimmer. He studied in Paris, and he's obsessed with the swimming pools of Paris. He told Pi's father that while some pools were dirty, frankly, he called them latrines, there was one that was the glory of the civilized world. The Piscine Molitor.
A pool the gods would have delighted to swim in, I believe is the exact quote from the text. It was pristine, it was social, it was the absolute height of French culture.
That's the one. So P's father, who runs a hotel and later on a zoo, decides to name his son after this glorious pool, Piscine Patel. It sounds elegant, it sounds French, it sounds sophisticated.
Right, until you enter the brutal, unforgiving environment of an English-speaking secondary school in India.
Precisely. Kids are cruel, and they are fast. Piscine becomes, well, pissing.
It is a cruel, inevitable slide of linguistics.
Pissing Patel. The bullying is relentless. The sources describe it so vividly. Kids raising their hands ask, where's pissing? Even the teachers do it by accident. They're rushing through roll call, Patel, pissing. It is humiliating. It defines his entire existence.
But this is our very first glimpse of Pi's core character. And this is really important for later on the boat. He doesn't just take it. He doesn't fight back with his fists. He's not a violent kid at all. He fights back with geometry.
I love this part. It's like a superhero origin story, but for a massive math nerd.
It really is. He walks up to the blackboard in every single class on his first day at a new school. He ignores the Snickers. He writes his full name, Piscine Patel. Then he underlines the first two letters, P-I. Then he draws the Greek symbol, pi. And then, just to completely seal the deal, he writes 3.14. He turns to them and says, my name is Pi.
He completely rebrands himself. He reclaims his identity through an irrational number.
And the choice of an irrational number is significant here. Pi is a number that goes on forever without a repeating pattern. It is used to understand the universe circles, cycles, the shape of the world. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing that this boy is trying to fit the infinite and the incomprehensible into a structure that he can actually live with. He takes the chaos of pissing and turns it into the mathematical order of pi.
He's a smart kid.
Yeah.
He actually ends up doing a double major in college in Toronto much later in life. zoology and religious studies. Which, seems like a really weird mix, doesn't it? Science and faith.
Yeah.
Usually people pick a lane.
For Pi, they aren't contradictory lanes at all. They are two different ways of observing the miraculous. In his college thesis, he focuses on the three-toed sloth.
The sloth. I love this detail in the notes. Why the sloth? Is it just because they're funny looking?
No, it is much deeper than that. He describes them beautifully in the text. He talks about the moss growing on their backs, how they are so still that they just disappear into the background. He calls them upside-down yogis. He sees God in their absolute stillness. He says their calm demeanor soothed his shattered self.
Shattered self. That is a massive hint at the trauma to come.
Exactly. He studies them after the lifeboat ordeal. He appreciates an animal that stays put, that is safe, that contemplates the universe without constantly moving. Because for 227 days, his life was nothing but chaotic movement and terror.
But this background, the zoology and religion, is the foundation for his entire survival. He grows up in a zoo. His father runs the Pondicherry Zoo, which sounds like every kid's ultimate dream. Paradise on Earth, Pi calls it. Waking up to lions roaring and monkeys shrieking right outside your window.
But paradise has rules, and his father teaches him a very traumatic lesson about that paradise early on. His father is a harsh realist. He is a zookeeper, not a Disney movie director.
The lesson is about boundaries. The father is terrified that his boys Pi and his older brother Ravi are going to treat the wild animals like house pets. They look at the animals and think they're cute. So he decides to shock them into reality.
He takes them to the tiger cage. There is a huge tiger there named Mahisha, and the father forces the boys to watch as a live goat is fed to the tiger.
That is intense parenting. I mean, today that would get you a very quick visit from child services.
It absolutely would, but in his eyes, it is effective parenting. He wants them to see the violence. He wants them to know on a visceral level that an animal is not a friend. It is a killer. The text describes the boys hearing the actual crunch of the goat's bones. The terrifying silence of the kill, it traumatizes them, but it instills a healthy fear that later directly saves Pi's life.
Right. It sets up this core tension between the scientific reality that animals are dangerous predators operating purely on instinct and Pi's spiritual reality, which just wants to connect with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And speaking of spiritual reality, Pi's a bit of a collector when it comes to religions.
He really is. He's an omnivore of faith. He does not see the boundaries between them that adults see. He's born Hindu, and he loves the sensory richness of it, the colors, the multitude of gods, the deep connection to the universe.
But then he meets Jesus.
Right, through a Catholic priest who offers him a cup of tea. And Pi is very confused by Christianity at first. He asks, why would a god suffer? Why would a god let himself be humiliated and killed by mortals? It doesn't make any sense compared to the majestic, all-powerful Hindu gods he grew up with. But he falls in love with the idea of pure love. He realizes Christianity is fundamentally a religion of love.
And then he discovers Islam.
He loves the intense physical devotion of Islamic prayer, the brotherhood, the way the forehead touches the ground in complete submission. He calls it the religion of the beloved.
So he is actively practicing all three. He's a Hindu Christian Muslim, which leads to one of the absolutely funniest scenes in the entire book, the three wise men confrontation.
This plays out exactly like a classic sitcom setup. You have the priest, the imam, and the pundit. They represent the three strict orthodoxies. They all bump into Pi and his parents at the Esplanade on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and they are all completely shocked to see the others there acting familiar with the boy.
The priest says, Piscine is a good Christian boy. The imam says, no, he's a good Muslim. The pundit says he's a good Hindu. And then the arguing just explodes.
It gets so heated. They are shouting over each other. They demand he choose. You can't be all three. You can't go to the temple and the mosque and the church.
And Pi's response is so simple and yet so incredibly disarming. He quotes Gandhi, but he adds his own little spin. He just looks at them and says, I just want to love God.
It shuts them up immediately. It embarrasses the adults because they're fighting over territory, over the real estate of religion, essentially. And he is talking about the pure divine experience. But this is crucial, right? Because on that lifeboat, he is going to need every single ounce of faith he has.
He will need the Hindu connection to the cosmos to not feel entirely alone when he's staring up at the empty stars. He will need the Christian concept of suffering to endure the physical pain. And he will need the strict discipline of Islamic prayer to keep a daily routine. It's his spiritual armor.
But the armor is about to be severely tested because history interferes. It's the mid-1970s. India is going through a period called the emergency.
Just to give you listeners a quick history refresher, this was a period where Prime Minister Indira Gandhi suspended civil liberties, censored the press, and jailed her political opponents. It was a time of huge instability and fear. And remember, we are just presenting the historical backdrop here, as is written in the source material. We aren't taking any political sides.
Exactly. And Pi's father gets very nervous. He worries the government will come for the zoo or that the economy will completely collapse. He decides to sell everything and move the family to Canada. To Winnipeg, specifically.
This is the grand departure. They pack up the animals, they sell them to various zoos in America, and the family boards a Japanese cargo ship called the Simsum.
And this is exactly where the nightmare begins. They are sailing across the vast Pacific. It's July. And in the middle of the night, Pi hears a strange noise.
Like an explosion or a structural failure.
We actually never find out exactly what it is. That's part of the terror of it. But the description is visceral. He calls it a monstrous metallic burp. The ship doesn't just spring a leak, it completely collapses. It sinks with a terrifying, unnatural speed. Pi is the only one on deck because he wanted to see the storm that was brewing.
And here is a tiny detail I completely missed the first time I read this. The crew actually throws him overboard into the lifeboat. But they don't throw him overboard to save him.
No, this is incredibly dark. They throw him overboard to be bait.
Bait.
There is a spotted hyena loose in the lifeboat down below. The crewmen are trying to clear the deck or distract the wild animals so they can maybe use the boat themselves. They toss Pi down there like a piece of meat.
That is chilling. It really emphasizes the absolute chaos of the moment. So Pi lands on the tarpaulin of this lifeboat, and he watches the ship go down, the lights flicker and die, and suddenly he is completely alone. Well, not alone.
No. The cast of characters on this lifeboat is bizarre. You have Pi. You have a zebra, which jumps into the boat from a great height and breaks its leg, a very gruesome injury. You have a spotted hyena, which is hiding under the tarpaulin. And later, floating in on a raft of bananas, comes orange juice.
Orange juice.
The prize orangutan from their zoo. She's this deeply maternal figure. Pi projects a lot of human emotion onto her. She looks shocked, mournful. He sees her almost like the Virgin Mary floating on the water.
And then there is the fourth survivor, Richard Parker.
The tiger.
Now, we really have to talk about the name. Richard Parker does not sound like a tiger's name. It sounds like an accountant or a dentist.
It's a bureaucratic mix-up, which is a bit of a running theme in the book. A hunter captured the tiger and his mother. The hunter's actual name was Richard Parker. The tiger was named Thirsty because he was furiously drinking at a river when he was caught. But the shipping paperwork got the names swapped in the columns. The tiger officially became Richard Parker, and the hunter became Thirsty.
It humanizes him, doesn't it? Calling a 450-pound killing machine, Richard Parker forces you to address him almost as a person, as an equal.
It does. It gives him a distinct personality, and Pi is terrified. He sees the tiger struggling in the water and actually helps him aboard initially, shouting, "Jesus, Mary, Muhammad, and Vishnu." But the exact moment the tiger gets onto the boat, Pi realizes his massive mistake and jumps off, hanging onto an oar off the side of the boat.
So the stage is fully set. You've got a small lifeboat. You've got a zebra with a shattered leg, a vicious hyena, a motherly orangutan, a teenage boy, and a Bengal tiger hiding under the tarp. This is the lifeboat hierarchy.
And this brings us to the law of the jungle, segment 3 of our deep dive. It is brutal. We really have to warn listeners here. The source material is extremely graphic. This is not a cartoon.
No, not at all. The hyena is the instigator of the horror.
The hyena is an opportunistic, vicious scavenger. It starts with the zebra, but it doesn't kill the zebra immediately. It eats it alive.
Oh, God. That is just horrific.
It starts eating the zebra from the inside out through the broken leg. The zebra is alive for days while this is happening.
Yeah.
It is a display of pure, senseless suffering. Pi is paralyzed by it. He can't intervene. He just watches life being consumed in slow motion.
And then the hyena turns on orange juice.
Right. Orange juice, the orangutan, actually fights back. She thumps the hyena hard on the head. It's this brief moment of hope that goodness or maternal instinct might triumph over savagery. But she's an ape, not an apex predator. She doesn't have the killer instinct. The hyena eventually overwhelms and kills her. It decapitates her.
And Pi is just watching the slaughter. He knows he's next.
He assumes he is next. The hyena is completely frenzied. It has taste and blood. But then, and this is one of the most cinematic moments in the literature, the hyena screams, and suddenly, from under the tarpaulin, Richard Parker rises.
The king has awoken.
The hyena didn't know the tiger was there either. Richard Parker dispatches the hyena instantly. Just silence. A swift snap of the neck. No long, drawn-out torture like the zebra, just pure, undeniable power.
And now the hierarchy is completely cleared out. The zebra is dead. The orangutan is dead. The hyena is dead.
Now we are too.
Just Pi and the tiger.
This is where Pi's brain starts working in absolute overdrive. He realizes he is locked in a cage with a killer. He goes through a frantic list of plans. Plan number 6 is the war of attrition.
Right. Just wait for the tiger to die. Don't feed him. Let him starve. Tigers need a huge amount of food and fresh water. It seems entirely logical.
But Pi realizes the fatal flaw in this plan. It's a psychological flaw.
If the tiger dies, Pi is totally alone.
Exactly. The book says, if he dies, I am left alone with despair. This is a profound psychological pivot. He realizes that the tiger is the only thing keeping him alert. The sheer terror of the tiger keeps him from thinking about the agonizing loss of his family. The need to feed the tiger gives him a tangible daily purpose. He needs the tiger to be the other.
So he switches to plan number 7. Keep him alive.
He saves the tiger to save himself. It is a beautiful paradox.
But how do you keep a hungry tiger alive without getting eaten yourself? You can't exactly just ask him nicely to sit in the corner. This brings us to segment 4, the taming of the tiger. Pi has to use his zoo knowledge.
He has to establish dominance, not physical dominance. He would lose that instantly. He needs territorial dominance. He uses the circus ring theory. The lifeboat is the ring.
He has a bright orange whistle from a life jacket. This essentially becomes his whip.
Yes, and he uses the motion of the boat. Tigers get seasick. Who knew? But it actually makes biological sense. Their equilibrium is highly sensitive. So Pi waits for the boat to roll on the waves, or he rocks it himself, blows the whistle sharply, and the tiger feels nauseous. He associates the piercing sound of the whistle with the intense nausea.
Pavlovian conditioning at its finest.
Textbook. Pi creates a strict boundary. He marks his territory literally. He urinates on the tarpaulin. He marks the top of the boat as his personal domain. And Richard Parker, respecting the biological codes of territory, accepts it. He hides his own feces, which is a major sign of deference in the wild. If he wanted to openly challenge Pi, he would leave his waste out in the open.
So they settle into this weird, tense routine. It's a survival routine. Pi has to become a provider. He stops being a vegetarian pretty quickly.
Necessity dictates morality out there. He has to kill fish. He has to kill turtles. There is a very poignant scene where he struggles to kill a dorado, a large fish, and he openly weeps over it. He wraps it in a cloth so he doesn't have to look at its eyes or feel it die. But just days later, he's violently hacking up turtles and drinking their blood without blinking an eye.
He talks about the emptiness of time. The routine is the only thing that keeps the creeping madness away. Checking the solar stills for fresh water, fishing with the cargo net, cleaning up after the tiger. But the madness does come eventually.
It really does. As extreme starvation sets in, the thin line between reality and hallucination completely blurs. This is segment 5, the descent into the surreal.
This part of the book is like a literal fever dream. Pi goes blind, physically blind from severe malnutrition.
Yes, and Richard Parker goes blind too. They are both slowly dying. And in this pitch darkness, Pi hears a voice. He thinks it's the tiger talking to him.
Imagine that. You're dying on a boat in the sun, and the giant tiger starts chatting with you in a French accent.
He asks the voice about food. The voice talks longingly about bananas and cigarettes and boiled boots. It's bizarre. But then Pi realizes it isn't the tiger at all. It's another castaway.
A blind Frenchman in another lifeboat. They somehow drift together in the middle of the ocean.
It is a moment of incredible, almost absurd coincidence, which the book readily acknowledges. They connect their boats. But the Frenchman is not a friend. He boards Pi's boat. He is actively trying to kill Pi, to eat him.
He's a cannibal.
He is. But he makes a fatal mistake. He steps directly into the territory of Richard Parker.
The blind tiger strikes.
This was the terrible cost of Richard Parker, Pi says. The tiger brutally kills the Frenchman. Pi eventually regains his vision, partly by using the dead Frenchman's supplies, though the text heavily implies he might have, used the Frenchman's flesh. It is left somewhat ambiguous, but he definitely admits to eating the man's dried food and using his remains for bait.
It's horrific. But then, just when you think the story cannot possibly get any stranger, they find land.
The algae island.
This is the most fiercely debated part of the story, I think. It is a massive floating island made entirely of vegetation. No soil. Just dense green tubes of algae.
And it is heavily populated by hundreds of thousands of meerkats.
Meerkats on a floating island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
It makes absolutely no biological sense. Meerkats are desert animals from Africa.
No?
But here they are, living in total harmony, completely docile, unafraid. They climb all over Pi like he's a piece of furniture.
And the water is fresh. The ponds on the island become freshwater during the day, but then turn highly acidic at night.
It's a complete biological anomaly. Pi thinks he has finally found paradise. He eats the algae, which has a sweet outer layer. He drinks the fresh water. Richard Parker gorges himself on meerkats. It's an endless buffet. They both regain their strength.
But Paradise has a major catch. Pi starts sleeping in the trees because he notices the meerkats all sleep high in the trees. And one night he notices something awful.
The island is carnivorous.
The island eats things.
At night, the chemical process of the algae completely changes. It secretes an acid that digests anything touching the ground. Pi finds a fruit high in a tree. He peels back the layers. And inside, a human tooth.
A human tooth.
Then he finds a whole set of teeth. He realizes that some poor soul was stranded here long before him. They stayed for the physical comfort, for the endless food, and eventually the island slowly consumed them entirely.
This is the critical choice of the whole journey. Pi calls staying there a spiritual death.
Exactly. He can stay, he can live comfortably, he will never be thirsty or hungry again. But he will be living in a gilded trap. He will be isolated from humanity forever, consumed by mere physical existence. Or he can pack up and get back on the lifeboat. Back to the starvation, back to the terrifying uncertainty, but back to the slim possibility of home.
He chooses life. He takes food, he takes water, he calls Richard Parker, and he leaves the island behind.
Which is an incredible testament to the human spirit, the absolute refusal to settle for a comfortable cage.
They are back at sea. And finally, after 227 agonizing days, the lifeboat washes ashore in Mexico.
The arrival.
You would expect this to be a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, jumping up and down, hugging the tiger, the swelling orchestral music.
But Pi is far too weak. He collapses face first on the sand. And Richard Parker. He jumps off the boat, he stretches his legs, and he walks directly toward the jungle.
And Pi is just waiting for the look, the acknowledgement, the "we did it, buddy."
He desperately wants the cinematic goodbye, the knowing nod of respect between survivors.
The tiger just walks into the dark jungle. He never looks back, not even once.
He abandoned me so unceremoniously. That line breaks Pi's heart. He weeps on the beach. The rescuers find him weeping, and they naturally think he's crying because he's finally saved. But he tells us he was weeping because Richard Parker left him without a proper goodbye.
It really speaks to our deep human need for closure, doesn't it? We need our stories to have neat endings. We need our intense relationships to have wrap-ups. Nature doesn't do wrap-ups. Nature just moves on.
That is a brilliant point. The tiger is nature. It does not owe Pi a moment of quiet reflection. It doesn't have nostalgia. But Pi is human. He lives by stories and symbols and meanings. The bungled farewell haunts him for the rest of his entire life.
So Pi is rescued. He's taken to a hospital in Mexico. And this brings us to the final and, in my opinion, the most mind-bending segment of the deep dive. Segment 7, the investigation.
Enter Mr. Okamoto and Mr. Chiba from the Japanese Ministry of Transport.
These poor guys. They just want to know why the cargo ship sank. They want a standard report. They want to know about structural failures or severe weather conditions. They have clipboards and pens.
And instead, they get a malnourished kid telling them about a Bengal tiger, a carnivorous island floating bananas, and a mystic approach to God.
You don't buy it.
Not for a single second. They tell him flat out, bananas don't float, which, by the way, the text points out they actually do, but the officials are rigidly skeptical. And they say tigers don't exist in Mexico. They treat him like he's completely delirious.
Pi gets incredibly frustrated. He starts arguing with them about the very nature of reality. He tells them about a polar bear that escaped in Calcutta and was never found. He says, reason is excellent for getting food, but why can we throw a question further than we can pull in an answer?
He is directly attacking their strict materialism. He's saying, you only care about what you can physically measure, but they just want a dry report they can file away in a cabinet. So finally, Pi says, okay, you want a story that don't surprise you. You want dry, yeastless factuality.
And he tells them the second story.
The story without any animals.
And this is where the floor completely drops out from under the reader.
In this new version, there is no tiger. There is no hyena. The cast of characters completely changes. The zebra with the broken leg, that is the Taiwanese sailor who broke his leg jumping off the sinking ship. The hyena, that is the ship's cook. A hateful, greedy brute of a man. Orange Juice, the motherly orangutan, that is Pi's own mother. And the tiger, Richard Parker.
The tiger is Pi. And in this brutal version, the events play out with humans. The cook, who is the hyena, cuts off the injured sailor's leg to use as bait. He lets the poor sailor die slowly. Then he eats him.
Cannibalism, pure and simple.
Then the cook gets into a violent fight with Pie's mother. He kills her. He throws her severed head over to Pie.
And Pie the tiger kills the cook in retaliation and eats his heart and his liver.
It is absolute, unvarnished horror. It perfectly explains the brutality. It explains the desperate survival at all costs.
It also explains why the tiger disappeared the exact moment they hit land. The animal nature, that killer instinct that Pie had to adopt to survive the ocean, was no longer needed in civilization. So it walked away. It left unceremoniously.
So the Japanese officials are just stunned. They sit there in silence. They see the exact parallel. They realize that this second story, the human story, is physically and practically possible. It perfectly explains the biological facts. But it is repulsive. It is deeply tragic. It's too dark to live with.
And here is the absolute climax of the entire text. Pie asks them a question. He says, "Neither story explains why the ship sank. You can't prove which one is true. So tell me, which story do you prefer?"
He asks them for their aesthetic preference.
Not just aesthetic, moral, spiritual. He's asking which story allows you to actually live with the world. Which story makes the universe bearable?
And the investigators, after a long pause, say the story with animals is the better story.
And Pie simply replies, "And so it goes with God."
Wow, let's just sit with that for a second. And so it goes with God.
It is the ultimate philosophical defense of faith. Martel isn't saying faith is factually true in the way a recipe or an engine manual is true. He's saying that reality is harsh, brutal, and often entirely senseless. We can look at the world as a place where a cook eats a sailor and a boy eats a cook. That is the dry, yeastless fact. Or we can choose to look at the world as a place of wonder, where tigers can be tamed, where islands can float, where survival is an outright miracle.
The cold facts don't change either way. Pie survived 227 days. His entire family is dead. But the story you wrap around those facts changes absolutely everything about how you experience the memory of those 227 days.
Exactly. God, in Pie's view, is the better story. It is the necessary narrative overlay that gives meaning to the unbearable suffering.
It's so interesting because the investigators, in their final official report, and the source text actually includes this report at the very end, they write down the story with the tiger.
They choose the better story for history. They officially record the miracle, even though they heavily doubted it in the room.
So let's bring this all back to you, the listener. We started this deep dive asking about the mechanics of survival. But the text suggests that survival isn't just about finding rainwater and raw fish. It's about finding a narrative that keeps you from falling into total despair.
Plan number 7 wasn't just keeping the physical tiger alive. It was keeping the story alive. If Pie admits to himself that he is a cannibal who brutally killed a man, he dies of brokenness right there on the boat. If he is a clever zookeeper who miraculously tamed a wild tiger, he is a hero.
It's a profound survival mechanism of the mind.
It connects right back to that college thesis on the sloth, the quiet observation, the seeing of miracles in the mundane. Pie's ability to turn a horrific human tragedy into a majestic story of zoology, and God is his true greatest feat.
It really makes you wonder about the stories we tell ourselves about our own lives. When bad things happen, do we force ourselves to choose the dry, yeastless version? Or do we actively look for the tiger?
And is the better story a lie? Or is it just a deeper, more necessary kind of truth? That is the lingering question Martel leaves us with.
I think I am firmly with the Japanese investigators on this one. I prefer the story with the animals.
Me too, without a doubt.
But here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as we wrap up. In the second story, the brutal human story Pie is the tiger. He's the alpha predator. But in the first story, he spends 227 days completely terrified of the tiger. If the tiger is just a fractured part of his own psyche, what does it actually mean that he spent 7 months trying to tame his own dark nature? And what does it mean that he grew to love it?
And that he so deeply misses it when it's finally gone.
Exactly. Maybe we all have a Richard Parker hiding on our lifeboat. And maybe the real tragedy isn't that he's there, but that we have to say goodbye to him when we finally reach civilization.
That is definitely something to think about.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We will see you in the next story.